Christopher Nolan is bringing the Odyssey to the big screen. And as an archaeologist who works with mythology for a living, and as someone who genuinely loves good stories, I watched the trailer more than once. And not just because it's Nolan, but because the Odyssey is one of those stories that everyone thinks they know until you actually look closer. So the question isn't really, will this movie be accurate? The real question is, which Odyssey is Nolan actually trying to tell? Because depending on that answer, this could be something very special or something very familiar. Let's take it from the beginning. Before we get into the trailer, let me quickly explain who I am and why I'm even reacting to this in the first place. My name is Konstantin and I'm an archaeologist, a classical archaeologist, and I work with ancient history and mythology both academically and publicly. I spend my time researching the ancient world, but also translating it through books, lectures and media for people who don't live inside academic papers. Greek mythology, especially, it's not just something I study, it's something I work with every day, both as a researcher and as a storyteller. And that's important here because the Odyssey sits exactly at that crossroads. It's literature, it's myth, it's history, and it's one of the most influential stories ever told. So, when a director like Christopher Nolan decides to adapt it, the question for me isn't just will it be accurate or did they get the armor right? It's something way deeper. What kind of Odyssey is he choosing to tell? And what does that choice say about how we still understand ancient stories today? And that's what this video is about. Just to be clear from the start, this is not a frame-by-frame breakdown and it's definitely not a rant about historical accuracy. We're working with a 2-minute trailer. That's nothing. You can't judge a film from that. What you can do though is look at tone, atmosphere, choices and what the trailer seems interested in showing and what it avoids. So I'll walk you through what we actually see, what I personally liked, what raised questions for me, and what kind of Odyssey this feels like. Now, the trailer opens with burials, fallen warriors after a battle, most likely within the context of the Trojan War. We see individual graves, weapons, armor, and then a warrior who clearly stands apart. Odysseus bows before him, possibly Agamemnon. Then we move quickly into wandering. Odysseus and his companions, cut with shots of Ithaca, Penelope and Telemachus waiting anxiously. We get the sea, obviously, because there is no Odyssey without the sea. Then the Trojan horse. First from outside, then from inside. The silence, the tension, the men hiding. And then one of the most iconic moments in all of Greek mythology, the cave of the Cyclops and Polyphemus. And right after that, my personal favorite, the beginning of the Nekyia. Odysseus' descent to the Underworld. Then storms, shipwrecks, and finally a tender moment between Odysseus and Penelope before he leaves for Troy. That's it. It's definitely not much, but it's enough to raise some very interesting signals. The first thing I liked, watching the trailer, is the atmosphere. This doesn't feel like a checklist adaptation. It doesn't look like it's trying to retell the story episode by episode. It feels experiential, wandering, uncertainty, danger, the sea as a threat, home as an idea more than a place. That's important because the Odyssey is not just a sequence of adventures. It's a psychological journey. And that brings me to one line in the trailer that really stood out for me. Nothing stood between my men and the return home. not even myself. That line alone suggests something interesting, because Odysseus is not a flawless hero. He is clever, brave, resourceful, but also proud, reckless, and deeply responsible for much of his own suffering. Blinding Polyphemus wasn't necessary. Mocking him definitely wasn't smart. Angering Poseidon wasn't fate, it was consequence and hubris. So if Nolan leans into Odysseus as a complex, morally ambiguous figure, not just a genius hero, that's a very good sign. The Underworld scene is crucial for me. The Nekyia is one of the most powerful episodes in the entire epic, not visually but symbolically. It's about memory, death, regret, the cost of survival. It's where Odysseus confronts fallen heroes, his own past, his own mother, and the limits of human agency. Now, if Nolan treats this seriously and not as a spectacle but as psychological descent, this could be one of the strongest parts of the film. As someone who works with ancient concepts of the underworld, I can definitely say this is where the Odyssey stops being an adventure story and becomes something much deeper. Now, a few things raised questions for me. First of all, armor and visual choices. No, they are not archaeologically accurate, but for me, that's fine. This is not a documentary. Visual language matters more than precision. That said, there is a limit between stylized and distracting. There is one helmet in particular that honestly made me think I'd accidentally switched to a Batman movie. Well, that's not a deal breaker for sure, but it's a reminder that aesthetic choices shape how ancient stories feel. Second, the gods, or rather, the absence of them. The trailer is entirely human-focused. No Athena, no Poseidon, no divine presence. This might mean the gods will appear later, or they will be present symbolically, or not at all. Well, not at all. We know that Athena will be present, but we don't know much else. That's a valid creative choice, but it changes the meaning of the story because in the Odyssey, gods aren't decorative. They represent forces beyond human control, fate, justice, imbalance. Removing them completely and you're telling a very different Odyssey, just like we saw years ago in the movie Troy. So, what does this trailer suggest? Not a mythological fantasy, not a faithful reconstruction, but a human story. A story about survival, a story about guilt, a story about leadership, and, of course, the cost of getting home. And honestly, that's not a betrayal of Homer, because the Odyssey was always deeply human. The monsters are definitely memorable, but the emotions are what lasts. If this film makes people curious enough to go back to the epic, to read it, to question it, maybe to love it, that's a success on my book. Accuracy matters, but engagement matters more. So, no, I can't tell you yet if this will be a good adaptation, but I can definitely say this. The trailer suggests a thoughtful approach. One that treats the Odyssey not as a legend to recreate, but as a story to reinterpret. And that's exactly how myths survive. If you're interested in mythology, archaeology, and how ancient stories still shape modern culture, feel free to stick around. We'll definitely be revisiting this as we learn more. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell down below because more stories from ancient Greece are coming from your Greek archaeologist. Till next time, have a good one.